The people versus racket head speed. I think that's been a big term for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
The racket head speed, and I'd like to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts. Like to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, I certainly don't use that word, that phrase in my lessons ever.
Yeah, I would say that it's kind of like lag, that I've never really used it. I would say I'd only mentioned racket head speed only a little bit more than none. I might use it though for other reasons. One thing that kind of helped me, I don't know, and it just stuck in my head for some reason. I was watching the video Attack. Do you remember that?
I do. Is that
Bollettieri and Agassi?
Yeah.
Nick Bollettieri and Agassi.
Oh, I remember that video. You got to have a weapon. You got to have a weapon. And don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Nick and I were friends.
Yeah,
I hung out with him in Florida. He's a great guy.
Oh yeah.
But that video killed me. You got to have a weapon.
Well, so what stuck? What helped me is when he said, the fastest moving part of the contact of the swing is the contact. You have to accelerate your racket speed at the contact. And I was like, what? Like, I've never heard that. Wow. Isn't that going to be wild? Isn't that going to, wow. What that helped me with is playing the big points better, is playing through nerves better, because you have a tendency to tighten up, you have a tendency to slow things down. So I wasn't using it like as a mechanical way to re-teach myself strokes, and I don't use it as a mechanical way to help students teach their strokes. But for me, I would say things like, it's just cues, keep my racket speed. Okay, this is a big point. Okay, and like play the right way. Play the right way. If I lose this point, I will be satisfied and happy if I'm playing the right way. So keep swinging through the ball. So that's how I interpreted when he was talking about the racket speed there. When I'm using racket speed with my students, what I'll use it more is, is it a 1 through 5? 5 is the slow swing. 1's the slow swing. 5 might be the fastest swing. So we'll hardly ever use that. We're hardly ever using 1. We're going to be 2, 3s, and 4s. We might slice and defend with 2s. We might hit loopers with 2s and 3s. We might hit neutral rally balls with 3s. And we start attacking, maybe we're going to hit some 4s. So I will use racket speed more in incremental ways to help them understand swing speeds. But I'm not saying racket speed, more racket speed, use racket speed. You got to have racket speed as an end all be all. And that's the tip.
Yeah, to me, racket head speed is a little bit of that bully mentality again, because racket head speed should be evolved out of the correct stroke, not something you try to get. Kind of like bend your knees on the serve.
Byproduct.
It's a byproduct of doing everything right in your core. Your knees get lower to the ground and they rise. Well, it's the same with the racket head speed. When you do a bullwhip, are you moving your hand fast? No, you move your hand slow, figure 8, and the law, it's called the law of conservation. The law of conservation takes over, meaning as it gets to the smaller, lighter part of the whip, the energy has to maintain this. It has to be maintained as in the heavier part of the whip that you're using with your handle, right? It's called the law of conservation. So as it gets to it moves quicker, and then it breaks the sound barrier. But to try and move your arm, it'd be like me saying to you, look, let's get on some ice skates with 4 of our buddies. And I tell you, okay, let's all hold hands, and I'll be in the center, and I'll turn slowly. The guy at the end is going to be right? And there's no possible way that unless we're pulling him, he could never skate that fast.
No.
But he could be pulled. So that's where your effortlessness comes in, the effortless.
Isn't that where the water skier passes up the boat?
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's the racket head speed's a byproduct. So to tell someone, especially if they're a non-athlete or just a regular athlete, speed up your racket head, they could do it all in their little muscles, all in their arm, and that's not the way it's produced, right? I mean, racket head speed is infinite, right? If I try to move my arm fast, I can't. But if I do my figure eight, you can see it just naturally. And I can't even stop it. You know, good players try to hold back. I always tell my kids, good players try to hold back power and speed, where lame players always try to find more power and speed.
Yeah,
because a good player is a natural athlete, and they have that nice that center being the handle, right? The hips like the handle of the whip. And then the whip just comes naturally. So to tell someone racket head speed, I think is pathetic. I think it's a terrible tip. A terrible tip. And that's just me personally. You happen to be a decent player already. So when someone told you speed up and hit, when Nick says that, you already probably did all the other things correctly. That's why I always use that word, mentality.
I used it for a completely different reason.
Right. Just because you could do it doesn't mean some 2.5 player can do what you can do.
Right.
I speed up at contact. You tell a 2.0 player to speed up at contact, it's going to hit the moon.
Oh, yeah. And they never will. And then the 3.5 player, what's going to happen to them? Well, the opposite, right? They're going to get muscle tension.
Right.
And so they'll actually slow down their racket speed by trying to get racket speed in many cases, because you're not telling them how to do it.
That's right.
And then the muscle tension just stiffens
and they're thinking, oh, I snapped my wrist or something, when really it's the core that produces the racket head speed if you have that contrary motion, meaning meaning if your core moves first and it drags it and it continues to drag it, but then at contact it hesitates, right? That's where everyone throws their foot back at contact. So here it stops. But the shoulder and the arm have been following. Now this stops, the hip stops. Well, what do you think? Of course it's going to keep going because it's been following the whole time. Now it abruptly stops. And of course the upper body's going to keep moving because it has momentum, right?
I mean, it's not a great example because he was kind of an outlier, but there's plenty of examples in different areas, but like Brad Gilbert didn't have racket speed. Like, he massaged the ball. It was almost like he was decelerating.
Yeah.
And who's the Frenchman, the aging Frenchman that's still out there? He strings his racket at like 20 some pounds, and he doesn't have racket speed. He's the lefty.
Gasquet?
No. Gosh, why am I drawing a blank on his name? He's still playing, but he's probably got the loosest string tension, and he's just, his strokes are even kind of short, so he doesn't have racket speed.
McEnroe didn't have racket head speed.
McEnroe didn't have racket speed. A different era. Fabrice Santoro, he was also the magician with the racket. So
boy, was he annoying? Was he annoying to play?
Geez, yeah. So it's like, the Mosquito had racket speed, Juan Carlos Ferrero, but like not everybody plays like that. So, it depends. Are you on grass? Are you on clay? What shot are you hitting? Are you defending out of the corner? Should you have the same racket speed? If you're, trying, there's so many nuances and reasons to adjust racket head speed that tip of racket head speed is shallow and deceiving.
It's guilty. Yep. I think it should get the death penalty. I think it's terrible. But okay, so let's move on. Did we do load last time?
Yeah, we did. One last thing is how when a player comes up to you, 3.5 or 4.0, how do I get more racket head speed? Can you help me get more racket head speed? Like, where do I start? I don't want to be a jerk. You don't want to be a jerk. So you got to give them a few tips here and there, but then you're like, well, why? Like, what are you trying to get at? Like, let's get on the court. I'm sure the racket head speed isn't the solution to your 3.5 tennis.
That's the problem. People think that racket head speed equals power. But if you put side by side Federer
or skill or higher level of tennis,
if you put Federer and Roddick side by side, Roddick swung faster on his forehand, but Federer's forehand was heavier. and quicker.
Yes.
It moved from the court quicker, because when Federer hit the ball, I was there at courtside at Indian Wells once, and I watched him play. I was right at courtside. They played each other. Federer crushed him. But Federer's ball sounds different because it sinks into the strings deeper. The ball, you can feel and see the ball presses more air. The strings press more air into the ball.
Yeah.
So the ball flings off his. Andy slapped the ball. He kind of slapped it, and so he had a bigger swing, more racket head speed, but the strings didn't extend backwards, and the ball, you could tell it was just slapped. And he broke more strings than Federer. Federer didn't break strings.
And I don't believe he had more RPMs on the ball. I think Federer did 500 at least more RPMs.
It was so interesting sitting courtside, though. The sound of the ball was so different from Federer's forehand to Roddick's forehand. One sounded like a tambourine, and the other one sounded like a cello. Boom, boom. Big difference.
Yeah, big time.
And so I just think racket head speed is another bully mentality. It's kind of misunderstood. It's misunderstood. And it comes from perfection in the rest of the body, right? That
exactly.
traveling wave I talked about. That's 100%. Where it comes from. So guilty is charged.
And the by the way, Manarino is the name I was trying to think of.
Oh, one of my favorite players.
Yeah, there's no racket speed
One
there.
of my favorite players. He's the most. I use him as an example. He is very much like Federer.
But the funny, so my last point of racket head speed is oftentimes, if you want to get more racket head speed, you need to stop trying to get racket head speed.
You're right.
And I don't know that it's coached that way.
No, I don't think so. And you know me, I coach figure eight. I coach from the core out, right? Yeah. Just like that whip. Starts in the heavy handle and it ends up in the light racket head.
Yeah.
And that's all right. Well, we got through that one.